So, welcome everybody to the fall virtual preview. For many of you, this is, I don't know, fourth, fifth, sixth time that you're joining us. I am Maggie Tillman, one of the co-owners of Alta Colina.
I'm Molly Lomborg, winemaker here. Not part of the family, just lucky to be a part.
Actually, kind of a part of the family. And Bob Tillman, the other half of the ownership of this fine operation here.
Yes. Father-daughter, for those of you who do not know.
Exactly. My mother's just out of frame over here. Welcome. We're really, really excited. This is one of those things, these virtual previews that we started doing during COVID, and it continues to be really fun for us. There are folks from all over the US who really enjoy participating. And there's a big chunk of you this time around who have not participated in one of our virtual previews before. So we're really thrilled that you could join us. Welcome. A really strong lineup of wines today. So folks who learned about us through our partners at Master of the World, you know, a handful of you were able to get the cheese pairings from our friends over at Stepladder Creamery. That's also what we've been snacking on. Our friends of our existing members, and of course, our longtime members. Hello, we're just so glad that you're here. So for those of you who know us less well, we are 3 of a 12-person team, and Alta Colina was really Bob's vision. So 2023 is our 20-year anniversary. We bought this raw 130-acre piece of land on the west side of Paso Robles in 2003 and developed it from scratch. There were no vines, there were no buildings. We have a map partially in view behind us, exactly. And vineyard has always been priority number 1. So we are all about estate-grown Rhones that are really thoughtfully farmed here on site. So as we're tasting through, we'll show some photos of the vineyard. We'll toggle back and forth a little bit between a few slides. And we really do want this to be conversational. So again, throw any questions into the chat. We'll be excited to hear what you're curious about. And we're happy to expand on anything that we're not hitting enough on. And for our members, reminder, this is early access to customize your fall shipments. One of the inspirations behind this tasting, one of the perks of membership is you always get to choose what you receive. You can add on favorites, but we know that's a lot harder when you have not tasted the wines. So our virtual preview, we try to fold into that release schedule. So if you log into your profile at any point tonight, over the next week, you'll actually get the official release email tomorrow. So this is a little like sneak preview by participating tonight. You'll be able to rearrange their shipments and again, add on any favorites. We'll remind you one more time, hopefully I remember, as we taste through the libraries in particular, things that we're really low on in terms of inventory, we only have 2 cases apiece of those library wines. In order to grab those, you have to email Ivy, or you can also text her. And our fall white wines are going to be more or less sold out upon release. So as we're tasting those, if you're loving them, this is a good time to stock up. We anticipate over the next few weeks, they will disappear, which is great because they're wonderful, but also very sad because we wish there was more to go around. So again, don't be shy with the chat. And we also wanted to say a really extra welcome to the Osbornes. Thrilled that you're here, thinking of you. Cheers. We want to talk a little bit about what's happening in real time. So I'm going to stop talking and let Molly fill you in a little bit about Harvest 2023. Feel free to pour a little splash in your glass, but don't chug it too fast. We'll talk about the wine specifically after we catch up on what's going on right now.
Yeah, so pretty funny because you know, I'm supposed to do a Harvest 2023 recap, which is quite hilarious because we have barely started this year. And we were just reminiscing about last year when we did this virtual preview. And it was around the same time, I believe the first week of October. And we had brought in our last fruit on September 28th of 2022, which was
last week.
Yeah, last Thursday. And it was the earliest harvest of my career. And one of the earliest endings at Alta Colina as well. And this year we are October 3rd, and we have yet to bring in a red wine for Alta Colina yet.
It's maybe the latest.
This is now the latest of my career.
Yeah.
I've only been doing this for 14 years, but to have this juxtaposition is quite unreal. So we have been in it for about 3 weeks now, I believe. But it's been interesting. We've had some weeks that were really busy and then some calmer weeks. And I think every week at the end of the week, I tell the team, it's your last weekend off, so be ready because next week it's coming. And then I walk the whole vineyard on Monday and I go, maybe one more week. So it's just really interesting. I realize that we have people from all parts of the country here. And a lot of times we get stuck in our own mindset, our own houses, our own state. And I was actually talking to a friend, a previous colleague of mine who lives in Texas. And she was just telling me about how crazy hot of a year it's been and how all the lakes have run dry and the craziest heat. And she was talking. And then at the end, she goes, well, how's everything going there? And I'm like, well, it was the coolest summer we've ever had. And she's like, are you kidding me? And she's telling me all this stuff going, the last time that these lakes went dry was in 2011 when we had the craziest heat we've ever seen. And then when it was my turn to talk, I said, well, it's funny because we've had the coolest year since 2011. So I know that a lot of people in the country have been experiencing this crazy heat. Here in Paso, I think we're about 6 weeks away from a day over 100 degrees, which is
not normal.
Exceptional. It is like beyond not normal. Last year, if you remember, we had a heat dome. It started September 8th, I believe, and it lasted for 9 days. We had temperatures over 104 with nighttime temperatures above 80 degrees.
Also not normal.
Also not normal. So we're seeing these crazy extremes. But as far as harvest goes, this is like going to be one for the books. So the color that we're seeing in Syrah is just unbelievable. And normally we're kind of fighting heat waves. So you go out there, you taste, I look at the color, I look at the seeds and I think, I wish I could get one more week, but then you look at the weather and it says it's going to be 109 next week. And so you decide, don't know if it's going to make it through the heat wave. So let's pull the fruit. And this year is just so different. Every week I'm out there and I'm tasting and everything looks beautiful. And I'm like, maybe just a little more development. And you look at the weather and it's like 70s and 80s for the next week. So this week is literally the first week that we're projected to see between 90 and 100 since August, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
And so we're really excited. Patience is not normally my virtue, but I'm really trying to put that hat on. And yeah, it's fun. We've brought in some whites. We've brought in Grenache Blanc for sparkling and some Marsanne, Viognier, and Roussanne. But weirdly, we have yet to bring in Grenache Blanc for even still wine. And we brought in some Grenache for our Pet Nat, which is like a quick to market sparkling. But we have no reds for actual red wine production yet.
Yeah. And again, this day last year, we had been finished for almost a week in terms of harvesting.
So it's very weird.
And I would jump in here and just say, as you notice, we're pouring you the 2020s today, which means that these wines will be coming out in 2026. So stick around.
Yeah.
They're going to be freaking awesome with this long, slow development.
Exactly.
It's really nice.
Let's get into some wine. So hopefully you've poured yourselves a splash of the 2021, the Model Citizen Roussanne. If I get this mixed up with Marsanne, I apologize and Molly will correct me. We really try to, when it comes to when we release wines and the order in which we release wines, we're really thoughtful about it. It's not well, we've always done it this way. And we have always done it as Marsanne coming before Roussanne. So I'm gonna try really hard to not get mixed up, even though on the nose, it's really not Marsanne. So again, 2021 Model Citizen Roussanne. This again, we're going to be sold out basically at release. So shameless plug there of just, look out for yourself on that one. And I'm going to let Molly talk a little bit about how this blend came together. And then we'll jump back in with a little context about how we came up with the name and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, again, it's funny for us that we have 25% new people here because once people become a part of the Alta Colina family, it's like they've been a part forever. Like I can't tell you how many times I walk in the tasting room. I have only been here since 2020, but I walk in the tasting room and any one of our team members goes, "Oh, Molly, this is so-and-so. They've been a member for 10 years, 15 years. Like it's so amazing. And so for us, when we found out we had 25% new people, it's like, oh, we have to like introduce stuff again. So
that's cool.
We're going to try to remember, but we really appreciate everyone who's been here forever and everyone who decided to join us for the first time.
Truly.
So those of you that have been here for a long time know that the model citizen is usually 100% Roussanne. If you go back and taste throughout the ages, Bob loved to just throw a bunch of random stuff in.
It's very thoughtful random stuff.
Very thoughtful random stuff, of course. Bob said to be honest.
That's true.
Okay, I'm just joking. Anyways, so it was interesting when we were tasting through all the raw components of the Roussanne and the Marsanne, actually. I had one punch in each of Roussanne and Marsanne they just didn't immediately make my blend. So
I have a question. What's a punch-in?
Oh, great question. No, just kidding. So when we have different size vessels for making wine, a barrel is what we call like a 60-gallon, your regular size barrel. We have things called hogsheads that are about 79 gallons. And then we have 500-liter punch-ins, or they're 132 gallons. So about a little more than 2 barrels worth in one vessel.
Right.
No, it's good. I get a little nerdy sometimes, so I need to bring me down.
Runs in the family.
So anyways, whenever we were making wine, the way that I do all of our whites is that I will harvest them multiple times, even though we have tiny blocks. I treat the picks very differently. I vinify them differently, and then I leave them separate in barrel for about 11 months. In which case I go back to about 2 times during those 11 months and we taste through every single vessel and I pretty much rate them. So I'll say it's like 100%, model citizen, or a model citizen plus, or a model citizen minus. And so when I went back through in both my model citizen, the Roussanne blend, and my Claudia Cuvee, the Marsanne blend, I had these one punch-in that just got these little minuses on them. So we went back and tasted them again 6 months later, and I had the same result. So I was like, this is a bummer, but okay, we'll see what happens. So then I put together in my blending trials everything that was like a plus or just a solidly rated barrel. I was like, something's missing. And I just sat up there and was blending things. And all of a sudden I realized that if we took those 2 punch-ins, one of Marsanne, one of Roussanne, that didn't seem quite perfect, and I split them in half, and I put half of the Marsanne in the Roussanne and half of the Roussanne in the Marsanne, that the blends were like aces. And I remember calling Bob, like, you got to come up here, Bob. You got to try these. And I didn't tell him what I did. We tasted them blind, and he was like, that's it. Nail on the hammer. Like, perfect. Well, what did you do? And when we revealed it, it just ended up being this funny thing where they were each 86% of their normal varietal with 14% of the other varietal kind of mixed in there. So that's why if you're used to this wine being 100%, it might look a little different, but we promise you it's better.
Tastes
for the
good.
wine.
Tastes good.
The goal is always, what is the best wine? It isn't, we've always done it this way. So we just got to keep doing it, just because if there is something we can do to improve the wine, we will. And this is a nice way for it to give you some context about why it came together the way it did. And in terms of the story with the Roussanne, when we planted this vineyard, again, we started with bare dirt. We really had a vision for most of the wines. We had a plan. So we were like, all right, we're going to plant some Grenache, some Syrah, some Mourvedre. We're going to make a GSM. We're going to plant some Syrah to make a standalone Syrah. When it came to the white wines, we had less direction, I would say.
What do you mean? We're on top of it.
It's completely, always. And we were really slowest on the uptake with this wine. Over the years of farming, tasting, blending, putting wines together between the white wine varieties that we farm, we found just these gorgeous expressions of the Grenache Blanc, the Viognier, the Marsanne, and Roussanne. We would either sell the grapes to other winemakers or we'd blend it into something else. And one year, this was probably 10 years ago, we put together basically a white wine blend that we sold to some local restaurants. And it was mostly Roussanne because we did not know what we were doing with Roussanne. We had no other home for the Roussanne. So we thought, great. We sold that to some restaurants. 3 years later, literally, we unearthed a case in the cellar somewhere. So obviously Bob took it home and didn't tell anyone. And
Bob?
I know,
Shocking.
rude. And with a little bit of bottle age, this Roussanne driven wine was off the charts, crazy delicious. And it immediately caused us to rethink our approach. And I believe in 2015 was the first vintage that we said, okay, we've got this Roussanne, we have a plan now. We really want to highlight this grape going forward. And we'd always sort of jokingly called that section of the vineyard the model citizen. Roussanne does not have a reputation for being well behaved when it comes to farming. It's prone to a lot of issues and sort of inconsistency. And for whatever reason, ours has been the model citizen, sort of perfectly behaved. It's this incredibly we don't have to do anything to it, which is not normal. And it sort of as a joke internally, we'd always said, oh, the model citizen. So when it came to actually bottling it, it already had a name.
Yeah, Roussanne is a pretty interesting grape, actually. When it's young, it still has a wonderful texture, like I'm sure you guys noticed in the tasting. It's on your palate, it's big and creamy and rich. And that is present even when it's young, but oftentimes the aromas are kind of depressed and not real obvious. But if you give it a year, 2 or 3 of bottle age, it's amazing how it just opens up, and then you've got that rich texture, plus all the aromas of, for me, sort of honeycomb, a little hint of pear or something like that. It's an awesome wine. Yeah.
We like to release these, both the Roussanne and the Marsanne, going into the fall winter. It's a beautiful food wine with cozy stuff. So if you're, purees and roasted things, roasted chicken and veggies, really sort of cozy food.
Creamy soups.
Yes. It's both of these white wines are stellar. So it's one of the reasons we ignore the training we've all had that we're supposed to drink.
Which reminds me, I have to report in on these scores.
Oh yes, Bob.
Geez.
Yes, he does.
This is my role around here.
We love it so much.
So Jeb Dunnock, who is the most famous of the Rhone wine critics, gave this a 93-point score, which is pretty damn good. On white wines, it's tough to get over 90 from Jeb. And at the Orange County Fair, which is a big wine competition, double gold. Good work, Molly.
Stole the show.
Yeah.
I love it.
And just to kind of take you through what I'm picking up in the wine, is I get on the aromas a lot of like quince and kaffir lime with a little bit of marzipan. And again, you get that, it's a very texture driven wine. So it's really rich and creamy. And again, you always get this, if I get honeycomb and ripe pear on Roussanne and maybe a little straw, it's like we've done our job, and I pick up all of those in this wine. And also for those of you who have done the cheese pairings.
Oh yes.
And I'm sorry because I'm going to read off of our notes, but we have an extremely talented tasting room manager, Emily, and she made us all of the pairings ahead of time. And so we got to try all of them with the wines, and they were just beautiful. And she used to own a cheese and wine shop in Brooklyn. And she just has a real gift for pairing things. And so she wrote up a really beautiful thing on each of the wine pairings. So I'm just going to read through them because if I try to summarize them, I will not do it justice. So if you had a chance to get the cheese pairing, the 2021 Model Citizen paired with Rocky Butte Reserve, extra aged goat's milk, sweet, salty, tangy, and animally. This cheese is drizzled with Syrah Honey Farm coastal sage honey and paired with the subtle tea and beeswax notes of the 2021 Roussanne is an elegant experience.
I love it.
Right
Emily
on.
is great. Anytime you have questions, anytime throughout the year, do email Ivy, Erica, myself, or just Emily at altcolina.com. She's really gifted. So,
and she set us up with a beautiful cheese board before we ate it all up. Well, there's
We
a
would
little
show it
dregs
to you, but
over there.
it's gone.
it's not cute anymore. It is no longer cute.
Yeah.
No.
Yep. So if you all are ready to get into the next wine, ready? All right. So we're going to pour some of the 2021, the Claudia Cuvee Marsanne. And again, you'll notice that breakdown. So a little bit of the winemaking background Molly was providing. I'll let her talk to you more about how this wine came together. And then Bob is going to give you some background about how this wine came to be and why it's called Claudia.
Oh, well, Claudia is my mother, now departed, but a great lady. And there's all kinds of stories I could bring up about this wine. It's the first white wine we ever made. And she was strictly a white wine drinker. She never cared much for red wine. So we named our first wine Claudia Cuvee, and in the very early days, this would have been in 2008.
Yeah.
It was quite blended. There was a little bit of probably a touch of Viognier and a little bit of Grenache Blanc in there, but it was primarily Marsanne. Marsanne is a very little planted grape in America. At the time, it's been a few years since I looked, but at one time we owned 1% of the entire North American planting of Marsanne. So that tells you something right there, because we're tiny. Kind of the other story is when my mom passed away and we went to clean out her apartment. Guess what her refrigerator was full of? She was one of our original members, and she had been taking Claudia Cuvee for decades. Well, a decade and a half, I would say. And we had a wonderful vertical tasting.
Yeah. Courtesy of Claudia
at her
herself.
Celebration of Life. Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. A little bit about the 21 Marsanne from you, Molly?
Yeah, well, just to kind of back up a little bit, because we're highlighting a lot of different vintages tonight. So I kind of give you a little introduction into what we're seeing in the 23 vintage right now. But I do need to talk about the 21 vintage, because this was like a career making vintage. So 2021 was perfect in just so many ways. And I'm not sure that we quite realized it when we were in it. But we were all really happy after just like the challenging year that everybody had in 2020 to kind of be looking a little bit more up. And the wines are just unbelievable from 21. So I know I can't pimp that vintage too much, because it's going to be a year, a little bit more or less than that, until you start to get the 21 reds. But it really was just such a beautiful vintage. So we did call it the Fast and the Furious in the winery, because at one point we had every single vessel in the winery full, and Bob and I looked at each other and I said, so I'm looking at bringing in 9 tons. And I look around, I'm like, and we have no bins or tanks to put any fruit. So we're like picking up our phone, like, who's got something? And we're like fermenting and like the raisin picking bins from a friend. But I will say, all of that, we still made unbelievable wines in 21. So it really was a beautiful vintage. Again, you will notice that there is 14% Roussanne in here. So we had that little half a punch-in switch. But to me, I really love this wine. So it's funny, because I've always trended to the Roussanne over the Marsanne every time we've tasted the whites here. When I first started, we did like a vertical. We went way back in all of the whites. And it was really fun. I think we tasted every white you guys have ever made. And for me, I love Roussanne. It's such a beautiful varietal. And this was one of the first years where I was like, oh my gosh, like Marsanne. I love Marsanne. I love Marsanne. And it was fun, because 2020 was the year that I came on to Alta Colina. So Bob has been the winemaker since the founding of Alta Colina. And 2020, I was lucky enough to get brought on to help transition a little bit. And, I just kind of, I didn't know enough about Marsanne. I'd made it a few times in my career, but it wasn't something I had made like repeatedly over the last decade. And so it was fun. I kind of picked it a couple ways. And then in 21, I said, like, I'm going to put a lot of intention into this wine. I felt like the Roussanne knows what's happening, but the Marsanne, I want to improve upon this wine. So we picked it 3 different times. So we did an early pick with skin contact, meaning we pick it out of lower bricks, bring that fruit into the winery, and we foot stomp it. So think I Love Lucy style, without the like fighting with the old Italian lady. But we foot stomp the grapes and we leave them overnight on their skins, with their skins and stems, and press it the next day. So although we haven't gotten the flavor development from ripeness, the flavor is in the skins there. And when we process white wines, we generally just take whole clusters and just press them in a big press. So they don't actually have a lot of contact with those skins. So if you leave them to ripen longer on the vine, you're going to get more of those flavors. Those skins break down a little bit more, and more of those flavors kind of work their way into the pulp and the juiciness of the wine. But my thought was, well, let's give it a try where we can keep a little bit more acid, harvest them at a lower Brix, and we're going to foot stomp them and then leave them overnight. And then we do a middle ripeness pick, and then we come back and we do a late ripeness pick. And we're talking about the 1% of Marsanne in the world, but this is maybe 1.4 acres of Marsanne.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's tiny. So again, thankfully we are in a state operation. If we were to buy fruit from somebody and ask them to harvest 4 tons 3 times, they would tell us we're crazy and cut us off.
No way.
But luckily, Daniel Martinez, our vineyard manager, and I work very closely, and he's on board. He's in every blending trial. He understands what we're trying to do. And so he's not upset with me when I say, I just want to pull 1.5 tons from this block and 1 ton from here and only these rows. So it was really fun. I felt like in 2021, we really got to see the fruit of our labor. And we tried all of the individual components. And I was hoping, to be honest, that one of them was going to be the golden ticket. I was hoping we would say, great, early pick skin contact. That's the way we want to go. Great, middle pick. Instead, we liked all of them individually, but none of them were perfect. And then when we blended them was when the magic happened. And blending is one of those interesting times where we really get to be artists as winemakers. And it's so interesting because A plus B does not equal C in wine blending. So it's just so funny because you could take 2 of barrels that you think are the best of the best and put them together, and they're lesser than they were on their own. Or you can take 2 things that you don't think are very good and you put them together and it's just like perfect. So it's really another time where we get to kind of play around with the palette of what we're given as artists. And I think this wine is really fun. It kind of shows that.
Will you do the honors of the pairing with this one?
Oh,
and then
yes.
we'll jump into the library.
Thank you.
We'll
for
jump
that.
into the
Claudia Cuvee.
scores after this.
Oh, it's you first, Dad.
Should I do scores first?
I think you should.
Well, Dunnett got it wrong on this one. So the Roussanne was what, 93 and double gold. This one is 91 and gold.
Just 1 gold.
I think wah 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 is right. This wine is popping
It's
right
killer.
now. It amazing actually. Probably the best Marsanne we've ever done. Really great.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why Maggie was saying she was going to keep slipping up, because traditionally the Roussanne has just so outshone the Marsanne, at least in the beginning. There was one podcast on the I'll Drink to That with Levy Dalton, where I think he was talking to the guy from Chauve, and he said, "Oh, he's a Marsanne. He's perfect in year 15." So, we think we are aging these wines in barrel for about 16 months and then holding on to them for you guys for another 7 months to 9 months in bottle. So we think we're aging them, but according to the French, you need to wait 15 years.
Yes.
We got time.
Exactly. But anyways, this wine just showed so beautifully coming out the gate that we actually decided to switch the order that we tasted in. Okay, so the 2021 Claudia Cuvee paired with Moonstone, a firm cow's milk cheese with notes of brown butter and balanced minerality. Paired with thinly sliced locally grown apples, add the Claudia Cuvee for a perfect snack on a warm fall afternoon.
It's delightful. I want Emily to read me my food all the time. All right, let's get into the library, the 2017 Claudia Cuvee Marsanne.
Yeah, so we're going back, what are we going back here? 6 years now?
Yeah.
So before I launch into the wine, there's my mom. Yeah.
Aww.
So this picture was taken in, I'm going to guess 38 or something like that. This was in the day of the glam photographs of beautiful young women in the Depression. So yeah, my folks grew up in a small town in the panhandle of Texas. So they were not only in the Depression, they were in the Dust Bowl. So they were very tough people, but that's the story for another day. the Marsanne here, one of the first things that popped into my mind in 2017 was the year that Ivy joined us as an intern. Ivy, how old were you then? 22. We had a 22-year-old redheaded, I don't know, what about 5 foot tall, 90-pound harvest intern.
I stirred a lot of barrels.
She did great, let me tell you. It was pretty freaking awesome. We loved having her around. So the wine is, at this point in time, it's had whatever that is, 6 years, maybe 5 years in bottle.
Mm-hmm.
It has a little bit of blending. We put some Grenache Blanc into it to try and perk it up acid-wise. The Grenache Blanc is a grape that tends to retain more acid than the average white grape does. So a little bit of that blending back in lifted the kind of that weighty textural aspect of the Marsanne. And the wine is doing great. It's not, I'm not going to recommend long aging for your white wines, but these big Rhones, the Viognier, Marsanne, Roussanne, are very capable of, I don't know, half a decade of aging. So probably half a decade would be a reasonable thing to strive for on average.
Which is exactly where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, as I was saying, we tasted through all of the library white wines, I think in 2021. And I actually rated this wine to drink now, which was 2021, up actually through 2028. Like, I think this wine still has some time left. It's really funny because we feel like we're holding on to a lot of library wines. Like, if you look at our kind of case goods storage room, a lot of it is taken up with library wine. But when we go to do an event like this, and we have 4 offerings for you that are going to be in the fall shipment. So for those of you that are longtime members, you might notice that there was no Keystone in 2020. We were actually really short on Syrah that year. And so it will come back. We made one in 2021. It's a wine that kind of comes up and goes away. But anyways, we had this opportunity with the kits that we send you to present 6 wines. And so we have to look through and see what we actually have enough of to even show you guys, because it takes a few cases to make the kits. And then on top of that, we don't want to show you guys a wine that we have 2 bottles left of for you guys to buy.
We went for 24 bottles.
Yeah, so we're really like pushing it here. Pretty funny. It's the quantities are small. But I love this wine. I thought that it's just delicious. It's completely popping out of the glass. It's got the ripe pear, the floral aspects. And then on the palate, it's so soft and delicate. Sometimes these wines can just be so textural and unctuous. And with age, that will actually increase a lot of the times, but this still like maintains this elegance and femininity that I really love. And it has a lot of this sweet white fruit associated with it that I'm really digging on this wine.
Yeah, this 2017 was the end of the last drought. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the 2015 GSM. And basically every vintage, there is some event where if you talk to someone who works on the winemaking side, they'll be like, did you pick before or after the heat? Did you pick before or after the rain? Did you get screwed in the spring with the frost? Like, what was going on? And in 17, it rained, which after many years of not raining was a welcome change of pace. And that was one of the really defining traits of the 2017 wines. Basically.
Yeah. So we had a wet winter in 2011, and then we were in drought up until 2017. At the time, I was working about 10 minutes west of here. And just to give you a little bit of perspective, in 2016, we had 14 inches of rain. And in 2017, we got 42 inches of rain, which was just phenomenal. But it was really interesting because in 2017, we had a crazy heat wave in July. And then we had another heat wave over Labor Day. So at first, I kept comparing this year to 2017 because 2017 weirdly had a very cool start to the growing season. So I remember living deep out in the Adelaide and Paso, and it was July 4th, and I'm inviting all of my friends up from San Luis Obispo going, I need to get a blow up pool. What am I going to do? It's going to be so hot. It was like 75 degrees on July 5th. And then by July 8th, we had 10 days over 100 degrees. And so we had these two really big heat waves that year. Where this year we had the rain, we had even more rain than we did in 2017, which is unbelievable, but we never got the crazy heat. So we've had a couple heat spikes around 104, 105, but we haven't had anything that's sustained like we did in previous years.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about libraries, assuming you are ready to get into the 2015 GSM, let's do it. We're going to get into reds. And we are looking back at one of the blends that we have made since day one. So our GSMs, for those of you who have been enjoying the wines for a long time, you know this wine well, and you know that there's never a formula. So how this wine comes together, the only parameters we tend to set for ourselves is it will be Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre. And the aim is that Grenache will drive that blend, but how it actually comes together in a given year totally varies. And I think Molly's going to chat a little bit about what was going on in 2015, and then we'll let Bob talk a little bit about the wine, and then we'll get into the new stuff.
Yeah. So again, and I feel like sometimes, as Maggie was saying, like as winemakers, we all like remember so stringently what happened in certain vintages, surrounded by agriculture. And I realize that sometimes when you're just sitting at home, you might be on the East Coast and it could be 9 o'clock and you're just enjoying wine. And here we are telling you all these facts and figures about each vintage, like they're the most important thing that ever occurred, but they're still so strong in our memory. So for me, so sorry if I'm boring you, first of all, but for me in 2015, one of the most memorable things, obviously we were pretty deep into the drought. But one of the most memorable things was the cool weather that we experienced during bloom. So vines every year, they go dormant and then we prune them and their buds break and we get new leaves and we get shoot growth. And then it's like the baby clusters are about to come, but first they have to start as little flowers that then self-pollinate to make a little berry. And in a perfect situation, you're sitting in a mild climate and bloom could occur anywhere in 3 to 7 days. Well, we were in bloom for about 5 weeks in 2015. We had cool weather. We had a lot of wind. And we didn't have rain. We were still in that drought. There might've been like a sprinkle, but nothing that was notable. But what happened was we got a lot of what we call shatter. And that means that not all of those flowers were able to pollinate and create a berry. So it's like if you imagine grabbing like a bunch of grapes from the store, but you had a bunch of the grapes missing.
Yeah.
And so what that caused was for a bunch of people's yields to be down. Bob can speak more to what was actually happening here at Alta Colina, but there was people in the area that only received 25% of their crop that year.
Yeah, it is the lowest we've ever done in terms of yield on our vineyard. We typically on our 31 acres average 110 tons. This year 82 was what we got in 2015. It's by far the lowest.
82 tons.
Yeah, 82 tons. The highest we ever got is about 128. So that range is anywhere plus or minus 25% around 110. It was the next to the last year of lengthy drought. The berries were tiny. And if you taste this is like extracted heavy duty grapes right here that made this wine. It was a year of tiny berries and not very much of them, and wines that have a punch. And even today, it still is that.
Yeah.
But it was so great because with this reduced crop, we had amazing quality.
Yeah.
So although everybody didn't have a lot to share, the wines were just outstanding.
Yeah.
So it's really fun for us to drink this wine because we never got to drink them. Normally we spend 6 months, give or take, with the wine sort of daily in the tasting room. And in 2015, we were waitlist only because we didn't have any wine, which means we did not get to spend the same time with this vintage that we like to. So it's a real treat for us to get to revisit, basically.
Yeah.
And one of the other personal Alta Colina hallmarks of 2015 is that it was the first vintage in our winery facility.
Yeah.
So we've always slow and steady, we're a tortoise, not the hare situation when it comes to growing as a business. And farming and wine quality have always been number one. So we prioritized vineyard. That's where we put our money early on. And it took us about a decade before it made any sense for us to build an actual facility on the estate, which is where we are now. So that facility was completed at the end of 2014. So these 2015 wines were a big deal in a lot of ways. And that was one of them where we actually got to make them, where we, hand harvested them on property. And even though the building we were making them before was about 50 yards that way, it wasn't on the estate. So this building really closed the loop in a way that was meaningful for us.
Not to mention, this is a luxury setup we got here. Yeah.
It's true.
Well,
this is a metal building with about 7 walls.
But I will say another hallmark of you Tillmans is also being a part of the community and your neighbor, being a good neighbor. And for those of you who don't know, when Maggie was saying the wine was made 50 yards away, she's really not joking. Alex and Monica Villacana, they own Villacana Winery and Refined Distillery right next door. And that's where these guys made their wine up from 2007 and through the 2014 vintage. And it's pretty special because, first of all, the Villacanas are lovely people. And if you don't know them, you should check them out because they're doing the best things. And I can't tell you how many times, Alex, can I borrow your bottle filler? And then he goes, hey, can you drive your forklift down Adelaide Road and help me unload this tank? Like, it's just so nice to have good neighbors. And these guys are really one of the core foundations of Alta Colina is to be a good community member. And it's really fun because I think these guys are giving back as well, because we currently have some people now that are learning how to make wine under our roof here. So we have Theo and Colby who are starting Rockbound cellars. And we have another friend, Jeff, who's doing Vinyl Vineyards. And they've acted as kind of quote unquote free interns for us. But in this whole process, they've become really good friends. And it's fun. I think it's kind of going full circle to the way that you guys started, because we know that in 10, 15 years, we're going to be attending virtual seminars that those guys are putting on from their own facilities. So it's a really fun way to kind of see it all through. Okay, so again, 2 cases available of this. You can email or text Ivy, and at the very end of all of this, there's going to be a slide with her information. I did want to just kind of tell you guys what I thought of the wine, because sometimes I think that's fun, especially when you're tasting the wine. So immediately I put my nose in this wine and I got beef jerky and I got like a tanned hide. I just thought there's these really cool savory notes to it. And then there's this cool like mulled cherries, not moldy cherries, like mulled wine. So that cool kind of different clove and nutmeg and cinnamon spices. And I got some pure cinnamon stick, and I just feel like this wine is really complex and layered. Like I spent some time with this wine alone today, and I wanted to keep smelling it over and over again. And I think it's showing beautifully. And then, pardon me, on the palate, I got some Palo Santo, and just this beautiful texture with a little bit of Christmas tree. And
what
then
the heck is Palo Santo?
Hippie stuff, Dad.
Yeah, it's like this special type of wood that you can burn and you can clear auras and rooms.
Oh, okay.
But it's like this really specific scent.
It's Mendocino stuff, Dad.
I am from a hippie town. But I also got these like dark, slowly cooked cherries and this really nice sweet fruit element. So again, I put this wine as like a drink now through 2028. So I think it's a wine that if you do decide to buy, like what a beautiful Thanksgiving wine or Christmas wine to share with your guests.
Exactly.
Sometimes we like to have wines that sit in our shelves forever. And other times we like to have wines that we can just enjoy now.
Yes.
And since I keep forgetting the cheese pairing.
I know, we really are meaning to.
Well, before you say that, all of these wines would be great at Thanksgiving this year so far.
That's true. That's true. So the 2015 GSM is paired with marinated fromage blanc. This fresh cheese spread on toasted sourdough paired with the fruit forward GSM is like cream cheese and jelly for adults. Which I like.
I like it too.
Yeah.
So from 2015, we are going to zoom forward to 2020. Molly's first vintage with us is winemaker here at Alta Colina. And Molly and I have known each other for many, many years. And it was always a, wouldn't that be cool kind of thing. And, you know, Bob and I, we talked, it was a conversation for a long time that at some point the reins of the winemaking would be passed along. And sadly, I am not the one. The wine would be bad if it were me. And
Great
Bob and
marketing,
Molly,
though.
I know.
Great marketing.
Oh, it would have been a great story. It would have been a great story. Great story. So I can take, as has always been true, zero credit for the making of the wine. But Bob and Molly are really a pretty perfect fit in terms of really wanting to understand what is going on, experimenting, pushing things forward, always looking to improve. And it's been really exciting for us to get to share Molly's first sort of head to toe vintage. So as we get into these 2020s, in your spring shipment, you did receive the 2020 GSM, the 2020 Old 900 Syrah, and something I'm forgetting.
Sun Worshipper Toasted Slope.
GSM. We'll figure it out. But we're rounding out.
Old 900.
Oh, I said that one.
Oh, did
It's
you?
fine. We know about the wines, guys. Don't worry
All right.
about it. But this is the last of Molly's first vintage. So we are going to have you pour that 2020 Sun Worshipper. And this is our Mourvedre blend. So while the GSM is something we've done since day one, and again, a wine that we really were intentional about, it's part of why we bought land where we did, planted the varieties that we farm. We knew we were going to make that GSM. Sun Worshipper, this Mourvedre-centric blend, is more a wine that we feel like we discovered how well suited this grape is to Alta Colina Vineyard.
Yeah.
And I'll let these guys chat more about that. We've got about 10 minutes left. So one more wine after this, and then we'll...
I think we should keep rolling in case people can drop off if they want.
It's true. Again, on YouTube.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sun Worshipper 2020.
Yeah. So again, yeah, thank you. First wine here at Alta Colina was the 2020s. And it was a really interesting year in many ways.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Her start date was March
2nd, 2020. So I came in being like, yeah, I just got back from Costa Rica and they're talking about this flu, but like, it's all good. And there was like a weekend. And then I'm like, Maggie, did you hear the news? Like 2 weeks quarantine. And we're like, wine club's supposed to ship in like 3 weeks. We're like, should we push it up? Like, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And then the world ended. So that was cool.
But here we are.
Yeah, fun time. So it was kind of interesting. I think we worked our butts off to get everything packed. Monday, you and I came in, we loaded the UPS truck, and then we took off the rest of the week.
Yep.
And then we didn't really know what to do, but ag employees were considered essential workers. And so
Molly came to work.
We showed back up. Yeah. And then I said, Bob, what's going on here? And he said, well, the whole 18 and 19 vintage are all in barrel in the cellar. So you want to just start tasting? And I was like, okay. So just spent a lot of time with the wines and started to learn the programs. And again, everything's so intentional. However, the blends kind of go all over the place a bit. And I noticed that Sun Worshipper always had Mourvedre, but there's Grenache and Syrah, and there's kind of different things that were popping their heads in there. But after tasting through all of these Mourvedre barrels, it's just so evident how well Mourvedre grows here on this property. And so my goal has always been to highlight the Mourvedre as much as possible. So I'm trying to just add more and more Mourvedre. I've kind of dropped out the Grenache, but I'm still bringing it up a little bit with some Syrah. So you'll notice this is 85% Mourvedre, 11% Syrah, and then there's 4% Petite Syrah in there.
Sneak attack.
I added a little bit. But I think it's really nice. On the nose, to me, I get a lot of black cherry. I get this huckleberries, again, being from Mendocino. I grew up picking huckleberries in the woods. But then there's this cool graphite note coming through and a lot of like this, like a California bay laurel, which is, it's always kind of an earthy herbaceous wine for me. The Mourvedre is, you know, if you try old world Mourvedres, they almost all have kind of like an animalistic or an earthy herbaceous quality to them. And then on the palate, we get, again, that earthiness coming through and a lot of the wet clay, wild sagebrush, black raspberry, violets. And I don't know how many of you have been here to this area or live here, but I like to call it Paso Garrigue, which is just kind of like all this, we can kind of see it here. It's like this native brush that we see everywhere. We have all sorts of these kind of chaparral style bushes and small trees that grow here. And if you walk out, you can kind of, you understand what like Toyon smells like. And for some reason, to me, the Mourvedre always loves to absorb that.
It hangs out there so long, it soaks up a little bit of that, I think.
Hence the name.
Yes, the name here, Mourvedre is always the last thing we harvest by a lot. And it's because it's a grape that really craves a long, long growing season. And it just needs a lot of sunshine. You know, most often, if you see Mourvedre at all, it's in the context of a GSM. And we're able to get Mourvedre ripe enough to be a component in that blend. And we can also leave some hanging a little bit longer to achieve a little bit more ripeness so that it can drive this wine really beautifully. And without fail, everything else has been harvested. And then like 10 days later, Molly will be like, well, I guess we start thinking about Mourvedre now. So this year, she normally goes to Mendocino for Thanksgiving. Yeah. It's not happening this year.
We changed our plans. Yeah.
And it will be the Mourvedre's fault. So the name Sun Worshipper really is a nod to the grape that drives this wine.
Yeah. And also the canes love to stick like straight up into the air.
Yes. Like the plants are super vertical.
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of them sort of like up and then they like sprawl and hang out on the wires. The Mourvedre is just like reaching for the sun.
But it's really cool. I always call these grapes Sideshow Bob. So like I grew up on The Simpsons, you know, the guy that had all those crazy hair, but like sometimes one Mourvedre cluster has just like wings coming out in all directions and they're really long clusters and they're just beautiful.
It's a satisfying visual.
Yeah.
Photos don't do a great job of it, but we promise.
All right.
Scores.
Oh, let's just keep going, buddy. Come on.
Do we have scores?
We have scores.
For the 20. Oh.
So this one was entered in the Orange County competition and the San Francisco International.
Oh,
2 silver medals. I think they messed up. They should have been golds, but silver ain't bad. Silver ain't bad. Yeah, there's a lot of people like that with silver.
Oh yes, the cheese
pairing. Molly is going to read that cheese pairing while you guys pour a little bit of that 2020 toasted slope in your glasses.
So the 2020 Sun Worshipper was paired with lumberjack. So the cheese really is acting as the vessel for the oyster mushroom jerky. The butteriness of the jack calms the umami of the jerky and highlights the earthiness of the wine. And just a little nod to all of you that were able to buy the cheese pairing as well. Stepladder Creamery is who we partnered with for these.
Awesome people.
They're amazing. They're based out of San Simeon, which is one of my favorite areas along the coast. I don't know about you. But Michelle and the whole team there, they just do such a great job. They have all of their own livestock, and they're just making these dynamic cheeses. Locally, you can find them in some purveyors at farmers market. And it was just such a fun collaboration. We understand it wasn't something that everybody picked up on, and that's okay. But if you were able to kind of jump on that, it was really fun.
And it's something, if you're ever out here, a tour of Stepladder Creamery is an incredibly cool activity. They're right on the coast. And one of the things that's been really fun, you know, we keep talking about sort of the Paso community. Stepladder is an incredibly cool, super small, independent, family-owned operation, just like us. And there's going to be a mention in tomorrow's release email. As we get towards holiday season, we have some gift guides. And one of the collaborations we're the most excited about in terms of gifts is with a local family who has a pasta company. And it's called Eto. So we partnered with them to put together these bundles with a bottle of our wine paired with one of their dried, like homemade in Paso Robles pastas and a hand-selected sauce. So anyway, it's something we're excited about. Stay tuned. But let's talk toasted slope.
Oh, I'm really excited about this one, guys. I'm not gonna lie.
This is a great finale right here.
Yeah, this is like, this one's really exciting. So I mean, Bob says that he always can't pick favorites on wine because wines are like his kids and he loves them all equally. Don't worry, Max.
I'm the youngest. I'm the favorite. It's fine. So, everyone knows. They just can't say it.
Anyways, I don't know. For me, out of like this wine, it just takes the cake for me. Toasted Slope is made up of 2 different blocks. So block 1 and block 2 Syrah, which if you've ever had the pleasure of coming out to the deck, the Sundowner deck, and doing a summit tasting, you literally are sitting in the middle of that hillside. The blocks are 2 different clones. It's all south facing. So speaking about, we're in the Northern Hemisphere, so south facing slopes are in the sun the majority time of the day, hence the term toasted slope. And we have our other kind of main Syrah is the Old 900, which Maggie mentioned was released in the spring this year. And that is a completely north facing block with completely different clone. So we have Toasted Slope facing south and Old 900 facing north. And it's so interesting, the difference between these Syrahs. And then I did mention earlier that every once in a while we make a keystone. And that's really fun because what we do is we take one puncheon, that big barrel, remember, from each of our 3 blocks of Syrah. So the 2 blocks that are south facing that make up Toasted Slope, and one from the north facing block 8 or the Old 900. And those get combined. They're all aged in American oak, and that's what creates Keystone. However, we don't always have enough Syrah every year to create that blend. And in 2020, the Sun Worshipper was just literally my favorite wine that I think that we created that year. But on top of it, when we were tasting through everything, we had a couple of those hogsheads. So not the big barrels, but the medium-sized barrels that were just unbelievable to me. And Bob has always said, in tasting through everything, if you ever notice something that you think should be a standalone, he's like, we have our core wines, but I'm never afraid to break free and do something different. So I believe it was in 2018, we did 100% Grenache. And that was kind of the last time I had stepped outside of our normal wines, besides adding the carbonic and our canned rosé and some Grenache Blanc Petnat and a few little things. But in 2020, we had these couple hogsheads that were just knock your socks off delicious. And so we did create this special wine called the X, which is the first ever reserve wine from Alta Colina. So believe we're selling them in 2 packs. So it's pretty limited, but we still have 92 of those available. Again, if you're interested, Ivy will share all the details on that. But it's a really fun wine. So anyways, getting back to Toasted Slope, I just got on a rant there. So sorry.
So I should jump in here.
Oh, please.
San Francisco Chronicle wine competition.
God.
The numero uno in the world, gold medal. Not bad. Should have been double in my opinion, but some people don't get it. They're slow to pick up.
What are we going to say? Not everybody gets it.
If you can't tell, Maggie and I like to determine the quality of wine a little differently than Bob at times.
It's part of the joy of a multi-generational business, I would say. There are different things that speak to all of us.
Yes, it's true.
Which is wonderful.
It's true.
Yes.
But on this
Absolutely.
wine, for me, the aromas are just bursting with blackberry cobbler, baking spices with a hint of green peppercorn. And then the flavors, this wine is just so big and rich. So it's got this brambly fruit,
perfect.
and it's powerful but elegant.
Ivy's moving around
Thank you.
camera.
Oh,
Here we have the double gold medal on one.
Now he's just trolling us. We want you to know.
Yeah.
And the mere gold medal here. So I know they're
We told
you,
him
Ivy.
he should like pin them to his lapel for the event tonight.
like one of those
but
generals, you know.
He did not take us up
Slash
on it.
also take them home with him
Yes.
and not display them in the tasting room.
Yes, it's okay. We
I think we have a
All God's
generational
children.
divide going here.
Can we get a hands up? Does anyone buy a wine based on seeing this in a tasting room?
Of course they do. A lot of people.
Oh,
do.
look at their head shaking right there. I see that one.
we appreciate you weighing in.
Thank you for your honesty.
Boo, yes,
There will be
yes.
a survey sent out after the pouring.
All right, we're
Anyways.
focused.
Yeah, sorry.
Back
Yes.
to it.
We're not having
We're
any fun.
No.
here.
So with this toasted slope, we did not anticipate having 2 Syrahs every vintage. And it was another example of the vineyard sort of teaching us what was going on. We planted these different hillsides, these different clones, thinking that we would have one Syrah that was just insane. And every vintage so far, we've consistently wanted to say, okay, Toasted Slope, you're doing your thing. Old 900, you're doing something else. And occasionally it makes sense to work with them together in the context of that keystone. Yeah.
I'm going to read the cheese pairings so I don't forget.
And we know we're going a few minutes over. If you've
Yeah.
got to jump off, we totally get it. We so appreciate you joining us. And for folks who have a few more minutes, we'll
wrap it up quick. We
we'll
promise.
wrap it up quick.
I have a lot of talking to do yet.
Oh,
no, just
geez,
kidding.
I know you do. The 2020 Toasted Slope is paired with the red wine soaked Paso Vino. The chocolate almonds are really what makes this pairing work. The bitter dark chocolate and almond brings out the dark fruit in the wine. The cheese has notes of toasted almond as well and is soaked in red wine, creating the coveted tasting trilogy. The result is greater than the sum of its parts.
It was a great pairing. I hope some of you did get those cheeses. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and a huge thank you again to Emily for
Yes.
putting
Yeah.
that all together because it
Yes.
was delicious and beautiful.
So as we work towards wrapping up, again, thank you all so much. We have a great time doing these. And as long as you all are interested, we will keep doing them because it's a really nice way, especially for folks who don't live, within a couple hour drive. It's a really nice way for us to get together and share the wines with you and give you just a little more context as you go into that customization window for the fall release, which again is you can start doing that right now. We'll get the official release email out tomorrow, and sort of the point of no return in terms of customizing. And also if you need to change your shipping address or request an extra shipping date, a special shipping date or something, then all of that needs to happen by midnight on the 11th. So you get a week. And the wines will ship on Halloween. So stay tuned. You'll get information so that you can track those. We always want your membership to just be like a joy, a total delight. We know that receiving wine and having to sign for it can be a bit of a hassle. So we really try to equip you there as much as possible. And for those who are new to Alta Colina, thank you so much. We really hope you're enjoying it. We are going to follow up with, we're basically going to extend our members' shipping rates to you with an exclusive little code. So stay tuned for that information. And again, Osborne's, we love you so much. So glad you could join. And as you're getting into your selections, Ivy is available. Truly, when you text her, it is her. She is a human on the other end of the phone. Also her email address there, ivy@altacolina.com. And we just hope that you've got a little wine to spare and can keep having a good time.
And also for any of you who have not come out here, we understand we're, halfway between San Francisco and LA.
Totally convenient.
Not the easiest place, but we have a great little airport in San Luis Obispo. And we also have 5 vintage trailers that are located in the middle of the vineyard called the Trailer Pond. It's got its own website. As members, you get to extend your membership discount there. And it really is just an amazing experience where you get to camp in the middle of a vineyard, yet be 20 or 10 minutes from downtown Paso Robles, where you can get world-class dining. You can Uber there. And it's just a really, really cool experience. So we would love to host you here. It will be a Tillman you will see in the tasting room while you are here. You can find me in the winery, which is a window away, and we would love to host you.
It's true. Ivy, is there anything we're forgetting?
One last thing.
She's shaking her head.
One last thing.
Oh, medal?
What's our last
No, there's no more
medal.
medals?
I've covered the medals. We're good on that front. I just wanted to take a moment to kind of reflect a little bit. This is our 20th year on this little expedition that Lynn and I set off on in 2003. And when we set off, we had a quote vision, but we didn't really know what the hell we were doing. So it turns out to be not a very useful vision. And we've just kind of trucked along one step at a time. And it's been just a marvelous journey. And we're now in a situation, there she is.
We're forcing her to come in.
There's
For
Lynn.
you
Yeah.
who haven't been here yet, hi.
So we've kind of trucked along. We've got to the point now where we have like 12 people that work with us. And we have incredible wines, as I'm sure you probably noticed in this tasting. And it's just been a really rewarding journey. And the way we got here is you guys.
Yes. Zero question.
So we really appreciate it. And those of you that are members especially, we really appreciate that. You've carried us so far through the COVID
Pandemics
mess and all that. So at any rate, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Cheers.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. We're going to linger for a couple minutes. If folks want to get on with their evenings, thank you. If folks want to pop off mute, we'll hang out.
Yeah, if you have some
for 5
questions,
minutes or so.
feel free to
Yeah.
shoot them over.
Yeah, it's so lovely to see all of you. Thank you.
You getting teary, Bob?
A little bit.